want it to scale out, and we want the result to be the one that we want, you know? And so it's like, how do you scale breadth and depth out together is really interesting, but I need, in those places, my control freak, right? That says that I know how this is going to work across all of society. I call it my world domination strategy. I've got an awesome world domination strategy, and if you would all just see the world the way I do, everything would be fine. What the hell's wrong with you all? So it's really fascinating to be able to study and learn about ways in which transformation travels and ideas shift and travel. And I think we've got to get really good at that.
Guys, one last thing here. Like the piece that excites me here, and is that, and I've seen this happen in the city of Halifax, is that if we're able to effectively and consistently surface public opinion, it changes the decisions that political leaders make, because that's how they get votes, right? So actually you're able, the potential of this type of work is that directionality of society begins to move into the realm of the city. Directionality, right? So, but not that it doesn't have all of these blind spots and all of this weirdness in it, but like there's something there that's quite exciting.
Well, that leads me into mine. Okay, right. So, power. So here are 5 little provocative statements about power in this book. First of all, power is always operative. It's always operative. We are never existing in a context where power is not either allowing us, well, there's a lot of power allowing us to do it, or power is somehow scheming about how to undermine what we're doing. Don't fool yourself. Power is always operative, and power is often operative invisibly. Right? And so this is not conspiracy theory. I mean, I'm not sort of like, they're always out for us, but, you know, don't be naive. Like, just how many times have I been caught thinking that what we've got is the greatest thing going, and it just turns out that the people with all the power and the influence in the organization just don't see it that way. Yeah. Right? And so there's always somebody outside of the realm of who we can reach that has a no. Right? Who's that person? The power is always operative. Second little provocative thing. When you are hosting, you are always exercising power. Right? So how are you with your privilege? How are you with power? Because when you're hosting, you're always exercising power. And you're always going to meet yourself. I'm always going to meet myself. I always meet myself in my capabilities and my competencies around wielding power and privilege when I'm hosting. But hosting is even hosting participatory processes where the ideas are coming from the group, where the community is in charge. When you're hosting, you're always exercising power, and people will always see you that way. You're always seen that way. So that's fine. It's just what it is. But it's useful to bring these to our practice of participatory leadership. Third one. Self-organization and emergence are influenced by power and privilege. Self-organization and emergence is this beautiful thing. It's always influenced by power and privilege. Who I choose to spend my time with, is always influenced by who I'm comfortable with. Right? So don't get fooled into believing that when we create self-organizing systems that we're free of all of them. Fear and power are unsafe without trust. When we confront uncertainty and failure and people get afraid and they have power, suddenly you really see the teeth that you run into. Fear and power are unsafe without trust. Right? When people are powerful are afraid by the uncertainty, you're in trouble. And there are always people you will be afraid to include. There will always be people you will be afraid to include. And so, you know, as I was saying during Occupy, every neo-Nazi skinhead you've ever met is in the 99%. Every single one. Right? So,
I put it on 2 minutes.
What I would say is, Chris said when you're hosting, you're exercising power. Absolutely. Optics, even whatever you're doing hosting, even the optics of who's hosting has power in it, just, you know, in this country right now. And then the other thing about it, out of that is harvesting is power too. So when we talk about harvesting, we talk about making meaning of what you're hearing and presenting it back to people, even if you share with people. For me, if it's important, I almost always I'll harvest that one. I'll make sense of that. I'll write up that report. I gotcha. So harvesting, making sense. It's not just the being up front in the room, but it's bringing it back, massaging the information. That seems very obvious, but often harvesting is seen as a record kind of role. And it's actually quite powerful and absolutely shape the next bit of work.
A little piece that I would add and that I'm curious about and exploring is just, in addition to the way that we can see that power actually moves, how do our beliefs about power then add to how we're able to work well with power, or how we're not able to work well with power. So that goes a lot into the fear zone with people. A lot of the work I do, it's amazing how much fear and power and control and power, which tends to come from fear and power, relate to each other, and sometimes just misunderstandings, either blind spots about power or overprojection about power, can just tangle the whole power issue up. So it's a good area for getting clear in our own thinking, as well as just knowing what some of those principles are. So curious about that.
Yeah, man. So my belief as a kid of experiencing very rare, in fact, I don't think until I was like in my early 20s did I experience power being handled with integrity. So I basically had a belief that power corrupts you. And what that did was stop me stepping into my own power. Stopped me stepping into my own power, and stopped me being able to meet people who held power of any kind, being able to meet them where they're at. So, I feel like we have to get over our fear that power corrupts us, so we can actually meet it in the world. That's been my kind of journey about that.
And it's rampant. I hear it all over the place.
Yeah. The CEO in me has to be able to come out to meet the CEOs.
So it's both. Because it's the fear that power corrupts. You have to deal with that, but also the acknowledgement that power can corrupt.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
That's
right.
Yeah. None of these things are straightforward.
Yeah.
No.
It's not like either one or the other, so how do we not just rest in one or the other? It's like, see it, acknowledge it, and then what's the piece that can be cleaned off from my thinking about it, so I can relate to that well.
All right.
Somebody
Is it
got me for friendship.
2 minutes?
2 minutes.
I got it.
2 minutes.
Okay, you go one.
Speed dating, friendship. So I think what I would say about friendship, one of the things you said in the invitation, and that I've been saying a lot, is friendship is a pillar of strategic change, or a strategic pillar of change. That's Tim's language. And so I believe that. I believe that when we're talking about this kind of change, friendship almost always, whether it's acknowledged or not, comes into play. And the more we can be friends, the deeper, the more meaningful, and perhaps the broader that change can be. And so, and I'm not talking about like the milk toast kind of pale friendship. I think friendship is a radical act. It's a decision. It's a practice. How will I be friends with you? What does that look like over time? What does that mean when the rubber hits the road and I'm your friender? What does that mean? When friendship is a radical act, I'm going to be friends with you. It doesn't mean I'm not going to make hard choices with you, or I'm not going to make hard decisions for you, or I'm not going to exercise my power. But being in friendship is a really fundamentally different way of working. If I can allow you to be my friend, as well as my colleague, as well as my boss, as well as a stakeholder. Friendship is a radical act. And it's not weak, it's actually quite powerful. The other piece that I want to say about friendship is, friendship can absolutely bring more accountability. Right? That can be a way to get more work done. I would rather eat my toes than let Deb Helber down. Like if I tell her I'm going to do something,
Much easier to eat your toes.
if I tell her I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. May not be that day, but I'm going to do it because we're friends, and that's a huge way the work gets done. We can be accountable to each other. But I do not fool myself. I also worked in family violence for years. The people who love you are the people who may be the people who hurt you most. And so there's also the piece where friendship absolutely has no accountability. And that people who we are friends with, we can not say no to. We can accept things from that we would never accept otherwise. And so it can both bring super accountability And it can help us lose all accountability, so that edge is really important. Last thing, friendship is a practice. We have to have I would just say the word grace. Friendship means not only that I'm able to be in a relationship and perhaps extend grace to you when I am wronged by you, but I have to have grace for myself to practice friendship well with you. It doesn't mean you let your friends treat you any old way, but it means I'm willing to stay in relationship if you're willing to stay in relationship.
Cool. 2 minutes. There's the whole thing for me, like the art of hosting has a lot of stuff around friendship in it, and there's a kind of like cynical part of me, like really people actually, you know. So like I'm English, it takes a long time to become a friend. like I'm not like a leap-in friend, you know. I'm not a quick joiner. I'm not, you know. So I'm often in like, what's the level of relationship we need to do the work that we need to get done in front of us? You know, there's different depths of friendship and different depths of relationship that are needed for different depths and quality of work. You know? And so sometimes this thing can feel very fluffy and unclear to me and untrustworthy because of the way the word is handled. And I just want to say that.
You say friendship makes interdependence visible. So when you adopt friendship as a practice, I think what you're adopting is an acknowledgement of the interdependence of all living things.
Yeah, right.
And so that the radical act of befriending your enemy,
Right.
the radical act of befriending your enemy is not so much about making friends with your oppressor; it's about acknowledging the interdependence.
Lovely. I love that. I love that.
And just jumping off that, I would say it's been so helpful for me in my own practice to really engage with what do I mean by friendship and what does the whole concept of friendship mean, and be able to extend that beyond my grade 4 version of what it means to be somebody's friend and what it means if they're my friend, and if they did this, then they're not my friend, and if you are your friend, you have to come to your birthday party, like all that very base level, what is a friend? And so I think by challenging that and stretching that and looking at what are some of our basic principles of friendship and how they can show up in different places,
Right.
different levels, and how I can stretch myself. Like, what would it mean in this situation with this team of people where we've got some differences and struggles? What would it mean to bring in some level of friendship? What would I have to stretch in myself? You know, where do I push up against that and put some attention there? So it's like for me, some things around kindness, around the willingness to stay, around the willingness to be human together. How can I bring that in different ways at different levels without being vague? And how can I be a friend to myself in that stuff too? Because I can't do all this work if I'm not tending that relationship.
So one way these things are poking and prodding this inquiry in me is to look at the intention with each other. It's depth and breadth can be intention, depth and power can be an intention, depth and friendship. All of these you can set up as polarities.
That's right.
It's fascinating. And it's really hard to achieve them all at once. So it's a constant practice of moving between them. Right? Depth, breadth, power, and friendship.
And it's like these are like in my experience, these are like essential for the work. Exploring these things is essential for the work, and they're like fundamental parts of all of my work, you know. But they're also the areas where I feel like I'm learning the most and know the least, even though they're the areas that I'm exploring and practicing in the most. Does that make sense? So I've got like the most knowledge here and the least knowledge here, or something.
I know, Julie, what you made me think is like all of these I could say, I think that's true, all of these I could say, they're important and not enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like every single one of these, to have a good understanding of power, to have a good willingness to work with power is important, but it's not enough.
Right.
Friendship, same thing. It'll get you there. It's like what you said about seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Important, not enough. Breath, all of those things for me, like, yeah, this is the inquiry.
Essential but insufficient enough.
Yeah. Yeah, see, look, when you have a poet.
Right.
Essential but insufficient enough.
Go with your friendship list.
How a poet, that's not.
Sweet. So there's a little from us in this conversation that we're continuing to be in with ourselves and each other and with you guys. We just invite those as threads. You'll have lots of time to be in your own questions and your own sharing about this